are now listening to United 96 Podcast on the RFK Refugees Podcast Network.
I can't confirm, John. We were just kind of sitting in the stream. I was watching the Twitch stream.
We?
Yeah, we were just sitting. We were watching.
It didn't work at all. Excellent.
I mean, I don't know if it worked. It.
Imagine the intro video you all have seen hundreds of times. It was that. That's what we should have been seeing. I don't even know if you heard it. You might not even have heard it. Ted and I just might have been bobbing our heads.
Yeah.
Welcome to United 96. The audio experience.
The audio experience. People on the podcast are like, I get very confused when we do our live shows, I'm pretty sure. But welcome in, folks. Welcome.
If you don't know by now, this is what it is.
Yeah, but got one person here that's probably me. I might need to get out on socials here in a second. Just let them right know we're here. But we're here listening, talking DC United. You can tell we do not want to talk about DC United right now, and for good reason, because the game was not fun, and the vibes are bad, folks. The vibes are bad all around for this team. But before we get into that, John, other than watching DC United get embarrassed, how was your weekend?
That's all I remember. That's all I remember. That's all. I don't know. I did nothing else this weekend, Ted. This was like the black hole of weekends. I don't know. Ted, how was your week? Did you have things that were memorable in any kind of way?
Yeah, there was soccer. I watched disappointing soccer, I guess you could say. First embarrassing soccer and then also disappointing soccer.
Yes, the good kind.
Yeah, the Kickers had a 2-2 draw, which was sad because I was not able to be there. In case you're new or haven't listened in a couple weeks, I have moved to the Lynchburg area. I'm no longer living in Richmond, so I get less live soccer fix. So, but I still watch the game on TV. They seem to be playing a little better, but it's still been rough goings there. And then I watched DC United, which I have to because I do a podcast on this show, on this team, and so
you're required. It is legally legal obligation.
Watch all 90 minutes of that action. But other than that, it was a fairly quiet weekend. So,
those of you who are watching live or thinking about it later, over Ted's right shoulder is father of New England superstar Ian Harkes.
I just realized that is hanging up. Wow, I should probably just yank it down for now, but I'll leave it up.
We'll have something to say about that. There was a certain level of consternation about a former DC United player celebrating. We'll talk about it. I think it's much overblown, but some people were very mad about it.
Yeah, we'll talk about it. But first, John, do we want to get in? Do we want to dissect this piece of cow dung? Do we want to just open it up?
No, we should.
Waft to have the smell just waft into us as we try to plug our nose and dive right in.
That's a lot of metaphors.
Yeah, I know, man. It explains how bad this game was and how much this. So let's set maybe a little bit of the scene. DC United coming in, disappointing 2-2 draw to Inter Miami, coming off a string of uneven results. It's been a very up and down, uneven season. Regardless of this result, this team still sits in the playoff spot. They were leapfrogged by Chicago, who picked up a very, very tight 1-0 victory over Toronto to move into 8th place. DC now moves down to 9th place. Overall, I think there maybe was some concern about this team. I think this move or this whole game, the timing of this was interesting. I think there's obviously with the leaving this was presumably the last game of Lewis O'Brien. So I think everybody's like, all right, let's go see what the team can do. First 30.
Before we get started on that, well, it is very funny that it was clearly his last game, and Wayne Rooney in the press conference previous was like, "Hey, we're still trying. You never know, things might change." Yeah, it's like, bro, he's on his way to preseason. It's done. What are you talking about? I know that I want that to not be true, but it is in fact true. So I don't know why you're. It was very strange.
I don't know. We'll get into it. I'm kind of very much. I'm the Andy dropping Woody saying I don't want to play with you anymore type of meme with him right now.
Ted is the guy who got broken up with, who said like, I don't actually think she was that hot anyway. I don't know what anyone's talking about. That's the vibe.
That's not okay. Well, maybe, I don't know. Maybe it is. All right,
I don't think he was. He's not.
We are avoiding this game, talking about this game.
Why?
Oh, and why? But let's get into it. First, maybe 30, 40 minutes. Not
looked okay.
Yeah, not terrible.
Fine. The conversation around Wayne Rooney is like our plan worked because doesn't matter. I think it was Lewis O'Brien marking Gustavo Bo, like man marking him throughout. He's like, it worked great. And I think it was like, I remember watching, I was like, this isn't visually appealing, but this feels very much like a 0-0 road point potentially. And that would be fantastic. New England was not able to really break down the defense. They weren't really taking a lot of the ball. It was kind of in a stalemate. And I was like, I think that's our best case scenario. But then Steve Birnbaum took his 750th concussion with a Bobby Wood stray elbow, and it looked pretty scary. I gotta say, from watching it, I have a friend who was there in person, and her child asked if he was dead because of the way he was moving or not moving. And it's not, we have talked about this 1,000 times. This is like a long-term health consideration that he really, I don't know, the team obviously can't make you retire, or I don't really think, maybe they can, but they're not obviously going to do that. But it's getting to be kind of insane for him to continue on. It's just not, it can't be healthy, the amount of concussions he's had that we know about, not including, all the ones that we don't. Anything that could have happened in practice, who knows?
Yeah, I mean, I watched the video and you could see him fall to the ground. He's bleeding. I mean, I'd be curious. I haven't checked. I couldn't remember if did his head hit the turf or something. But he definitely gets smacked in the head. He looks out cold. I don't know if his eyes are just closed because he had just hit his, he was bleeding from his nose and is just like trying to keep blood out of his eyes. But he looks like he is out cold. Staff comes over. They kind of wake him up. They get him up. He kind of gets up, and there are certain moments when you can kind of tell that a player is concussed, and just the look of kind of confusion. He kind of looks a little dazed. He's not really.
He kept his armband all the way almost into the tunnel on his arm. He forgot to give it off. They had to come get it off of his arm.
Yeah, I mean, it was very clearly that he had suffered a concussion. So I don't know what that means for his career. I hope it doesn't mean the end of his career. Hopefully, best case scenario, he's out for a few weeks. Again, DC doesn't have a league game until August 20th, a few weeks to maybe a month, and then he maybe comes back and has to wear the Aleko Eskandarian headband.
Peter Check helmet. I think Peter Check helmet for life. If there's ever been an outfield player who has warranted the use of such items, it's got to be.
Yeah, so scary moment. Hopefully he is okay. I'm sure, right now Stephen Goff is currently in Australia, New Zealand, so DC news might be a little bit hard to come by.
Jason Anderson, save us! Your only hope.
Or Tom Bogart, which we'll get to him. He drops. He dropped a story this week. So, but that sort of started the cascade of badness. I think obviously I can't remember if this was before the Birnbaum injury. It was before the Birnbaum injury. Taxi comes up on an injury, and that was the moment where you were just like, oh no.
He rolled his ankle. You could see it in the slow mo. He rolled his ankle. It looked initially, before they saw that angle, it looked like he was holding the back of his foot, like where his Achilles was. I was like, that would be just exactly how this would go. Just on the turf before the break, just to have an Achilles explode. But no, he rolled his ankle and he pushed through it the entire game. And honestly, I would say in the first half, especially, his effort to press in attack and also defend. He stopped 2 attacks in his own 18 off of corner kicks. Taxi was up for it. Unfortunately, no one really else was, and it didn't really matter too much anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think this was a game that flipped. I think if the second goal doesn't happen, I think maybe we get we get a much different result in this game. I think the team just kind of came apart after that, and then it was just kind of like we're ready to take a break. We're ready for the 10 days we're going to get off now. But fortunately, Taxi okay. 44th minute, first comes off Bo. I'm mad. I'm upset about this goal. Obviously, it's a defensive breakdown. I think there are some people out there that are criticizing Tyler Miller. I'm kind of, maybe he could do a better job of, maybe if he stays on his line, he makes a save. I still think fairly unlikely. That is a directed header he doesn't really see. It's a really, really inviting ball in that it very much like sort of curves away, causing Miller to maybe hesitate that half a second, where I think it's maybe a little difficult for him to see. He tries to come out and make the play. Gustavo Bo heads the ball in the back of the net. I'm not giving Miller too much grief for that. I think the grief that he's getting is sort of just a culmination of the ball goes in the back of the net. A lot of people think he's struggling.
I mean, wait 15 minutes.
Yeah.
If you want to find a reason to get mad at Tyler Miller, I could tell you where one is.
Yeah, it comes in the second goal. So the first goal is surrendered. It stinks. I think if this team goes into the half, I think maybe you could see New England starting to build possession, but you're thinking maybe just get to halftime, reset. Maybe you can come back out. And but then I think the second goal is, I think for me, the backbreaker. I think that's when this game was truly over. A bad pass by Tyler Miller. I forget he's trying to play. I forget he's trying to play on that, but it's like just like a hard pass right down the middle. It's like the classic thing that they tell you not to do, or at least, I don't know, maybe some coaches tell you not to do.
Wayne says, do this. This is a good pass. We like this pass.
But it's dispossessed by Bobby Wood. Bobby Wood plays it off to Ian Harkes. That name sounds familiar. Who fires in the back of the net, 2-0. Chips Tyler Miller.
Tyler Miller made a couple mistakes. Tyler Miller made a bad pass. Then Tyler Miller was like in the forward reverse move. Could not decide if he wanted to push out and try to cut down angles or get back to his goal line. He did neither. He kind of just went and just stood there and then got chipped. So Tyler Miller compounded his mistakes and then yelled at other players. He was pointing at the player who was dispossessed on the horrible pass that he made. He was like, I can't believe this. What just happened? It's outrageous. Ian Harkes celebrates after that goal. He celebrates later too, and he scores other goals. But I think the other thing I will point out that Ian Harkes posted after this game on his Instagram said that felt good, and then all of his, I think, former DC United. I don't think there was any former DC United fans or players in the mentions. Anyway, do you have a problem with a player who has been gone for like 5 years, who was sent to the wastelands of Scotland for a couple years, being applauding his own goals or celebrating?
I think we're only mad that, DC United apparently doesn't have any interest in him or doesn't rate him at this point, because already I think he played well the weekend before, played well in this game. So, you're looking at a team that is losing a star player in Lewis O'Brien. And you had this guy who was literally in your academy. You had the rights to him. You could have maybe made a play for him. Now, maybe he had no interest in. He was like, nope. And I think, honestly, given the choice,
I think I was part of it too.
Yeah,
as well.
Go play with Bruce Arena. Go to a club that maybe could use you. Maybe he has no interest here. I think there's going to be. We're going to talk about the guy that's going to be coming in here that I think, I won't say plays very, very much the same. Very much the same role, but in that sort of center midfield, can get into the attack. We're going to be I think there's going to be some comparisons that are going to be made at the end of the year. So to be curious to see when that player comes in, which I don't want to spoil him. I want to tease him for maybe some that haven't been paying attention. Once he comes in, I think there's going to be some comparisons that might be thrown.
You said on Twitter or somewhere else, you said that we may have did him a favor by not bringing him back here, Ian Harkes.
Oh yeah, that's also depression, possession game, but yeah.
Sometimes depression's right, Ted. Sometimes the negative thoughts are the correct thoughts. I have no problem with him celebrating. Yeah. He was not rated here. He was behind Chris Durkin in the sort of pecking order. Actually, he was behind Junior Moreno and who was the other defensive midfielder at the time? Russell Canals and maybe even Felipe. Felipe might have been after. But anyway, he was sent packing because of that, and we found him. He found a spot in, was it Dundee United?
Dundee United, yep.
Played well there, came back. I think good for him. I think he's going to do well. He clearly is brimming with confidence. To try to chip that shot is some level of confidence. His second goal was taken with a lot more confidence.
He's off. In my opinion. He's certainly off to a good start. I think it seems like the time in Scotland at least did him well, maybe to grow out some different aspects of his game. He looked much more dynamic than he ever did playing for DC. It's another. I will say it's like another player that you look at and it's like, you were here for DC. And now you're no longer, and you're playing well. And it's like, this team just feels like sometimes just this like black hole where talent goes to die. I will be not surprised if Emil Assad ends up back in Atlanta and ends up scoring like 6 or 7 goals. Let's just say that. Like,
this is career purgatory. This is where you go to burn off your sins and then you go somewhere else afterwards and things get better. That's kind of how this is going.
I guess so. I think this game, the emotions of that combined with obviously Lewis O'Brien leaving, the scoreline, the result, I think this sort of represented kind of the not halfway point of the year, but kind of like a sort of break point.
or breaking point, depending on who you're talking
about. Yeah, I think this all sort of culminated in how fans are feeling. Ian Harkes gets a third goal. There's an own goal then by Brendan Hines. Like, I don't know if I want to break down any of those goals.
Which one? One of them. Well, one of them is worse because Andy Nahar pulled his hamstring on one. Of them. Was it the fourth goal or the third?
It was the fourth goal.
Cool. So that also happened. Andy Nahar is the man with hamstrings made of glass is out again for some amount of time.
I understand. I really, it's Ruhan really, and I know some fans are gonna be like, yeah, he is that bad. Is Ruhan really that bad? Do we really?
No. He's gonna start every week now.
Do we really like? This is a game I like thought about. I'm like, I know hindsight's 2020, but I mean, if you're gonna play Nahar on turf, play him 45 minutes and that's it, regardless of how the score is going. This was a game that was very much clear and done. That's probably why he stays out so long. If this game ends 0-0, I bet he gets subbed off at halftime. No, and I think this leads to a larger question with Andy Nahar. I love Andy. I have him on the back of my kit. I was very excited to have him back. I think we all were. I think he showed a lot of promise. He's certainly, when he's on the field, this is a different team. But you almost have to wonder, are the injuries and his sort of inability, and through no fault of his own, I mean, it literally came from injuries he picked up in Europe that he literally just cannot recover from.
Yep.
Is it time after this year? He got paid this year, which he certainly deserved it. I think it was actually 2022. I believe he got paid. I'm not sure,
but certainly not on crazy wages.
Yeah,
still very affordable. Still less than Brendan Hines-Ike.
Yeah, but you really, I think next year you really have to start looking at him as a off the bench type of guy, spot starter. Yeah, and I think maybe that was probably the plan with Martin Rodriguez, with Mohamed Jazz, that he would maybe have a limited role. Those guys got injured, and I think that's been sort of the story of the bad luck of this year.
Happens.
So.
Any player that is considered and intentionally to be a good depth player becomes a starter at DC United every single time. Yeah. I thought you were going to say, is it time to get rid of Andy Nahar? And the answer to that is certainly not. I think there is you have to.
I was going maybe that route, and then I maybe talked myself out of it. But
I think you're well doing. I think even if you could figure out a way to play him 15 times a year somehow, I mean, it's not impossible because Brendan Hines-Ike isn't a starter and he's making $300,000 or whatever he's making. It gets doable.
Yeah.
You just have to have the discipline to not. The problem is every coach sees him and is like, I can fix him. I know what to do to make sure that he doesn't get hurt. I can manage his minutes, but he's too important for me not to play because no other player on the team can do what he does. But they all fall for the same trap and he gets hurt again. His body can't take it. Can't take it. Never play him on turf. This team is not. It'd be one thing if you were like, it's the end of the season or it's the playoffs or whatever else. We were going to lose against New England. Mm-hmm. We knew that. Wayne knew that. Wayne said, we need to get a win against Miami because we know we're playing New England next. And the silent implication of that is we're going to lose because New England is one of the best teams or the best team in the league. And then they drew against Miami and their brains got all crazy and they said, oh, maybe we could do this. Maybe we could shock the world and play all of our best players for 90 minutes because we got a break coming up and let's just see what happens. And then what happened was we got pantsed and then also hurt and got a red card from like all the things that could have gone wrong. All went wrong.
Matthias Klick has not covered himself as good as he's been. And I think he is not getting, I think, a lot of the praise that I think he deserves for what he's done with DC and how good he has played sort of in that sort of role. I'm very curious to see if maybe this new player, Priani, can maybe unlock him a little bit, maybe get him a little more in a more comfortable position without having to really be a creator. We'll see. But still a player I think that's played really well. But now you look at, Tuesday picks up a silly yellow, gets suspended for a game that you rightly said is a must win. Now they should have still won that game without him.
Yep.
And then he picks up 2 yellow cards in a game that's 4-0 down. I mean, no reason to. The game's done. It's over. There's absolutely no reason to do what he did. And he picks up a red, and now he is done for the next league game. I would prefer it if he missed Leagues Cup. Like, I mean, if there's a way that those carry, but it's going to be the game against York. Again, a game I would say New York is pretty bad. The Red Bulls are pretty bad right now. It is on the road, which makes it a little more tricky. But a game also, I would say maybe we don't necessarily need him to win. So,
all right. So you mentioned it. Let's talk about that before we talk about new players that are coming or have not yet been confirmed to come, but are probably going to come. Leagues Cup. Mm-hmm. We've talked about it a lot on the show. We said, what is this team going to do about this? What is the league hoping its teams do about this. If you watched or tried to watch the Messi unveiling, the technical glitch filled Messi introduction on Apple TV, the team that I think there was absolute intentionality in getting him signed so that his first game was the League's Cup. This is the league is all in on making this a thing. What do we think? And we talked about this a little bit before the show. What do we think DC United is thinking about the League's Cup coming onto this break, trying to figure out where they're at? They're in the playoff spot. They're there technically. They are a playoff team if the season ended today. What do you see this team doing about the next? Is it 2 weeks? They're a month basically.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I mean, I think we'll see. I would not be surprised if, obviously, I think Christian Benteke. I would not be surprised. Christian Benteke and Tyler Miller are at All-Star Week festivities. It is in their hometown, a little bit different than trying to travel. I could envision a moment where maybe Christian Benteke gets a rest because of that. Maybe he's going to play a game. He's going to be him and Tyler Miller. Presumably, if Tyler Miller plays, are going to be like the only players. Now, again, it's a friendly match, a little bit different intensity. He probably isn't going to play the full time, but still, it's a game. It's minutes that his other team isn't going to get. Let me be clear. Like MLS is. I would not be surprised if there is directives coming from ownership through the players and through the coaches that says, we're not telling you to play your starters, but if you don't, there might be some, I don't want to say consequences, but just again, yes, the coach controls the roster, but I think for Leagues Cup, I think a lot of this and how people are going to perceive it is going to depend on who they're playing. The league wants this. Ownership wants it. This is why they're giving a month off, is so teams will take it seriously and not just shoehorning it in the middle of the season. I can't imagine a scenario where you can just say. Also, I mean, you have to think too as DC United. Like, yeah, sure, maybe you want the rest, you want a reset point, especially after that last game. But also, I mean, you can't just say, "Oh, we don't care about this. We're going to rest our players for a month and then have them show up again," because they're going to lose sharpness. They're going to lose consistency. You're also bringing in
they might do worse than they did against New England.
Yeah, so what does that do for morale? I think if you are Wayne Rooney, I think you see this as an opportunity. I think you have to go for it. You're getting the rest. You're getting a break. I think you have to go for it. I think you need to build some type of momentum. Montreal is a team that did win. They won over the weekend, so they kind of moved to challenge DC. But they are a team as well that has struggled over the past weeks. I think they're certainly a beatable team. Some stories resurfaced, I think, on the DC Discord about some of Losada's tactics, which are not surprising. And I think you have to go for it. I don't think you can afford to really lay down, especially too. You're going to have then a home game against Pumas. I mean, this is still an opportunity to win a trophy. Especially after, I think if DC goes out and wins in New England, maybe you're playing this with a different light. But I think you need to sort of regain some momentum, regain some form for Christian Benteke too. Like, I mean, I think you need to go out and do that. So
that's why I don't know if you can rest him.
Yeah. That's true.
I think you might need to play.
I think maybe you could see. I thought maybe you could see him rested for the Montreal game, and then for the home game against Pumas, maybe you see him out there. We'll see. Pumas is not of the clubs of the Mexican League clubs is not necessarily one of the biggest ones. I think they are one that sort of is. I mean, they still spend more money, but I think it's not as to the level or to the extent. So they're certainly a beatable team, especially at home.
We got the best draw we could get.
Oh yeah.
In the Leagues Cup. We got the most favorable draw probably of any of the groups. So it's okay. Don't worry about it. There you go. I feel like, I think you do got to take it seriously. I think that the players that you would want to keep out have already injured themselves for the most part. Benteke would be the exception. Benteke is a tank and doesn't appear to need time off, but his sharpness has certainly lost something. So maybe, like you said, a game off here, full, doesn't even dressed, doesn't like maybe the Montreal game. They play? Is it home and away legs?
No. It's just one game. So they're going to play on the road in Montreal. Then they're going to play home. It's a 3-team group. It was supposed to mimic the World Cup because that's what the World Cup groups are going to be, and then FIFA's like, no, we're not going to do that. I think that'll force a format change. I think we'll see how it goes because you have the dreaded situation that could arise where you have some. I think that's the biggest fear if I am with how they've set up this Leagues Cup is that there's going to be a dud group stage game that is going to be maybe highly spend a lot of money, and the teams are just going to pass the ball around for. So it could be DC and Pumas, who knows. But I think regardless, I think you'll see a first team lineup. It seems like Taxi's okay. Like maybe it was just kind of a concern. Yep. He'll be there. Andy Nahar, sometimes I feel like maybe things get a little tight and he kind of just says, know what, I'm done. It's over. I don't want to risk myself.
I'm taking a second mortgage out on the bet that Andy does not play for a month. That is a stone cold lead.
We'll see what the injury report says. Obviously, Brendan Donovan Pines will be back. I think he has been sorely missed. It's crazy. Right? It's crazy. It's crazy to think about how important he has become to this team.
Sign him to an extension right now, by the way.
Yeah.
Somebody said that this game was a great game for Donovan Pines' agent.
Yeah.
And I think that's true. The team has to really seriously look at like, what is it going to take to sign him in for a couple years? Because he's the rock. Him and Derek Williams, who costs like almost $1 million a year. Donovan Pines on a fraction of that. Really it's not going to come cheap. I think this is one of those things where
I don't know.
You don't think so?
I don't think. I think you can. I think he'll definitely deserves a raise. I think we have to be nearing the option year of his contract.
I think he's a free agent.
Oh, really? Okay. So. We'll see. I would hope he would sign, but again. I mean, we've seen players, this is probably would be maybe one of his last moments to make it to Europe. So it depends on.
He goes and plays for Arsenal and just becomes a starting center back. Like just salt in the wounds. But yeah, no, for sure. I think that I think Alex Bono should get one of these games.
I think
he's 2-1, right? He will have started both of our Open Cup games, including the one we lost, but he started the one against Richmond, and then he won against Dallas on the road, and that's been his only action, I believe, all year. So I think you give him at least one of these games, probably the Montreal road game.
I think it's time to start. Tyler Miller certainly earned that starting job. He held on to it, but I think after these past few, particularly after this last game, I think if you're Wayne, maybe you say, okay, what else do we have here? Maybe it's time to cycle the keepers. We'll see. I think we saw from Alex Bono a little less tendency to come out. He still definitely came out, but it seemed like it was a little more controlled. Maybe that, that's not something Rooney wants apparently, but maybe that's something that benefits the team. I want to reflect a little bit. Lewis O'Brien's last game, his time here at DC. We've talked a lot about how don't get attached. And maybe that's and then we got attached, I think. This is what happened.
I got very attached.
You were the one who was like, don't get attached to him. Just don't do it. And then it was like first game. You're like, oh man, you're already buying the jersey and printing it out. And like,
that I'm very good. I'm very good at knowing what I should do emotionally and then doing the opposite. I'm very good at that.
I am happy. One thing I am happy about, despite the fact he's going, is that the team is going out and making at least, that we're not sitting here deadline day wondering where's the Lewis O'Brien replacement. It looks like he's coming in right away. So that makes me at least somewhat satisfied that's happening. But what do you think like O'Brien's time is going to be viewed here? Like, is it going to be, it's going to be
by who? By fans? By fans or by him?
By fans. I think by fans. I don't care what he thinks. I care about what the fans think. This is what the show is.
I think that he will be extreme. I think the turnovers and stuff that resulted in goals will be forgotten, and all that will be remembered is we had a Premier League player come here for a couple months and just kind of wow us, I think, in ways that other midfielders have been unable to do. For particularly a player that had been out of the game for like 6 months and came in cold and started every game while he was here. I think that's and I think there'll be a lot of Nottingham Forest fans or Nottingham Forest curious fans in the next, couple years.
Yeah. If they weren't already, because, Ben Olsen obviously has some history there. So a lot of long-term fans, a lot of DC Nottingham Forest connection that was revitalized. I sort of agree with you. I think he'll be viewed obviously favorably. I'll be curious how many fans, like whether he'll be somebody who's remembered much long-term, probably not. I think the bigger question too will be, I think there was an article or someone pointed out about the age of DC United's roster. and sort of taking Rooney to task about his comments about playing the youth. And I sort of responded that this is kind of a ridiculous stat to use because, yes, the roster is older. They signed a lot of older players. And so, yes, they increased the age of their roster, but that hasn't meant that all their young players have rotted on the bench. They've gotten, I think, some minutes. We talk about Ted Pietro, who's unfortunately sort of, I think, escaped from the vision. And I would like to pin him as maybe a player that maybe is him not being here, I think, has hurt this team. And I think its ability to maybe get that little bit of an extra oomph to maybe that Miami game turns out differently if he's out there on the field. He's a player I maybe keeping an eye out. Is he ready to return maybe for the Leagues Cup? Could he maybe come in and make a difference? Where are we looking? We're probably definitely looking at him by the New York Red Bulls game. So, but you talk about one thing Lewis O'Brien did is that he took away from Chris Durkin. He basically took his spot. That was the big thing when he came in. It's like, well, he's going to play, but whose spot is he going to take? And it was Chris Durkin's. And I think that is something I'm not sure, like, if that hurts, if that hurts DC long term. I'm not sure. And obviously we talk about the player they're bringing right in here. What's the status there? And I think the biggest thing is I thought, well, okay, yes, but Canals is also gets hurt a lot. He's also missed time. And I mean, maybe a brief, 2-3 week span I can remember, but I mean, one big thing is that Canals has actually been pretty healthy this year. He's actually
he's got to be minutes most his highest in minutes played this entire career.
Yeah, I mean he's been, and I don't know if that's I think that's partly a change in role. I think he's not expected to run between the boxes too much. He's expected to kind of stay in that sixth spot. So I think that's helped him. That's lessened. I would not be surprised if his heat map was much, much colder around the 18-yard box. So it's a very different role he's being asked to play than in previous years. So I think that has sort of hurt Durkin, where maybe he gets an opportunity there, because I think he can play that sixth role and play it very credibly. So that's something to think about. Is we sort of had a player maybe that needed minutes and needed time and thought he'd get it, and unfortunately hasn't gotten it here at DC. So worth examining. He's maybe been the one player that sort of has suffered from some of these signings. We'll see if he gets another opportunity back here. He was the guy that was expected maybe to slot in there until DC United making their first big move of the window. They do have some room to work with. They do not have a lot of room to work with. Don't expect any DP or designated player level signings, but do expect maybe a U22 initiative signing, which I'll be curious to see. I think we've done I know there's certain rules about how many U22 players you can have based on how much you're paying DPs. I guess maybe Taxi falls under that TAM level, so maybe they do have the extra slot. But again, I don't think Chris Durkin's making significantly more that he couldn't also occupy that spot. But I'm going to, hopefully this is right. I got Gabriel Perena. How are we going to pronounce that?
Yeah. Pirani.
That might be it. Yeah.
That's a guess. We'll find out hopefully soon.
Yeah, I sat and watched Fluminense and Santos, watching him a little bit, trying to get maybe an idea of what this type of player is. They will be a loan with an option to buy, which I know you were in the chat talking about how look how many times we've had this happen. I think the difference between this and a lot of other things, that if they do sign him, he is a U22 initiative player. So it's basically the same thing as a designated player. It doesn't matter how much they spend to him. They can only pay him a certain amount above the cap, but he basically is a cap-free player. He's sort of the young money initiative player. A lot of DC's, failed signings were due to cap constraints. Luis Rodriguez was due to, they didn't want to pay him as much because they needed to keep him under the cap and they wanted to keep their designated player spots open. You don't have to worry about this with this one. So if this guy is successful, if he plays well, he'll be a different player certainly than Lewis O'Brien. But if he plays well, I fully expect that DC will make every effort to go out and sign him. He is sort of maybe we'll get to maybe one of my other sidebar stories, but he is a player that has been touted for a little while coming out of the Santos Academy. He was considered sort of the brightest spot on the team. He's had a little bit of he played a little bit for Santos. I think from what I read a little bit on him, they had a coach that was ready to play him. He played pretty well. And then, the coach got let go. And then, he wasn't really getting the other coach didn't value him as much. Classic story. He gets loaned to Fluminense, makes some appearances. He plays. When I watched the game against Santos, 1-0 victory for Santos, and I think he was subbed out around the 60th minute. I saw some good things out of him. You look at his FB ref stats, the progressive carries, he is currently in the 65th percentile in progressive carries. Progressive passes he is not very good on, but he's very good also at successful take-ons. He is the 82 percentile there. So he is a guy, and I actually saw this in the game. It was a lot of sort of one-touch passing. He would kind of get maybe a little bit in a bind, and he'd sort of make sort of a sideways pass. But he would also kind of float a little bit forward. It's when he sort of got on the dribble, got on the ball, I saw him make a really nice run into the box. He ran into the traffic. No one else was there really supporting him, so not much he could really do. He tried to get the foul, didn't get it. But some interesting things I saw from him. I'm maybe slightly intrigued by this signing. I think it's a signing that if it works out, it could be really good for the team and could be transformative for the year. And I think if he stays the year, I think this would be a successful signing. I think there's a lot of what ifs about it. I don't know, John. Do you have any thoughts on him? Any thoughts on the move?
No,
nothing.
I have no thoughts on him. I'm not going to pretend any. I'm not a football manager scout like some of our people we're about to talk to in a minute.
Go ahead.
I like that we're utilizing under 22.
Yeah.
I like that there's a possibility that we sign him long term. I'm grumpy about it because there are quite a number of loans that were financial restrictions, or what we usually do is we have an agreement to purchase, and then when it's time to go, we go, how about half of that? Would that be cool? Would you want to? How about Yamil? How about Velez? How about we give you $500 and some tickets for Yamil Assad? Is that cool? No, you want him back? Well, I guess playing hardball. It's fine. There's Leo Hara, TT. There's lots. Anywho, I think that it's good that we're trying to do this. I think I see him less of a Lewis O'Brien comp and more of a Lucho comp as far as a player that's in that role, someone that's able to think of Ted Cuti-Pietro is the only player who resides in the midfield that's able to create and take people out on the dribble that's currently in our setup, because Taxi's playing closer to goal. So this is a player that slots in, that provides you some more creativity in the midfield and can link up play. I think that's something we need. Great. If this works out, fantastic. We need more, but we just don't have, I don't think we have financial rooms to do anything else.
Yeah. I'll be curious to see where he plays. Does he just drop right into that Lewis O'Brien spot and just kind of play a more advanced forward? I'd say one thing I took away from the game, he wasn't afraid to sort of drop back. He kind of floated sort of in the middle of the field. He looked like in the Fluminense game, he was given a lot of freedom to basically decide where he wanted to do. He wasn't afraid to press, which I found interesting. I'm like, that's something I think if this team can get, I feel like we just kind of have one player that's sort of good at that, and that's Taxi. So maybe that's something different. I'll be curious if he sort of slots into that, I'll call it the Dahomey role right now. If he slots in there, if he drops right into O'Brien's slot as sort of a more advanced-minded player. I think that's what they've talked about, is what they've wanted, is sort of a more advanced player who can maybe get a little more forward. Lewis Bryan certainly was a more forward-minded player, but he was certainly not a guy who was going to be a creator. He was going to play an effective ball. He was going to be that sort of hybrid between 8 and 10. And honestly, I think his skill kind of made up for it, but it was, when we signed him, I was like, this guy feels a little redundant considering we have Matthias Klick. So we'll see. Maybe this gives DC a different look. If a guy is willing to take guys on the dribble, he can collapse some players and open up some space for Benteke, who again, struggling right now, I think, to say the least. But I think there's maybe some room. I'm not ready to throw in the towel on him. Is it a bad time to mention that he was considered a Football Manager wonder kid? He's like Gabriel, the guy for signing Gabriel. I say Gabriel, it's Gabriel. Definitely Gabriel. Because there was a little bit of a drop that I think got some noise in some of the fan base, and I have some thoughts on it. I think it's a little bit overblown. The title and the news articles make it seem Rooney apparently dropping that they have that they use Football Manager to scout players. Now, I play Football Manager. I love Football Manager. I use it.
It validates Ted's strategy to, as soon as a player gets good, I'm like, okay, guys, I want him, guys. FM loves him.
Okay. FM shows me he's a solid player. Again, I am a podcaster who does not have time to sit and watch.
You might be a scout, Ted. That's, I think, is what we're trying to say, is like, you could also potentially be an employee.
Let's be clear.
But I want to get Sean Howe drunk and talk to him about Football Manager. That's what I want to do. I want to be like, so just curious, like, could I see your doc on your computer? I just want to see.
But so the title brings out that, apparently Jose Mourinho does this as well, but that apparently, Wayne Rooney is using Football Man. Like, it's acting like he is literally sitting at his computer and searching the game. That's not what he said. He said, in a lot of the market in South America, we've done a deal with Football Manager, the computer game, where we give them advertising and they give us access to scouts, 11 or 12 of them. They use different places across the world, help them, So basically what he's saying is that I think they give some sort of advertisement. I know that there's some sort of rights deal with Football Manager, like MLS is licensed in that game, so maybe it's something to do with that. But I think they're getting, it sounds like, free access to free data from their scouts, which, I mean, they do employ a lot of scouts to do it.
What club has Jose Mourinho played at that he could not afford real scouts that his team employed all over the world?
Porto? No.
Okay, so 20 years ago, that was the case.
AC Milan? I don't know.
Roma maybe he doesn't have it, but whatever. This is a weird story, but we shouldn't dig too much.
I think some people are thinking like, oh, this is all DC's using instead of all the other avenues. I'm sure if we went to Sean Howe and said, oh, you're just using Football Manager, you'd say, no, absolutely not. Like, we know we know that he has been out to games. He was at the Fluminense game where Gabriel Pirani played. So he is definitely a guy who is.
That was our first Threads. That was the first Threads picture that he ever posted. So that was our exclusive. So this is a real thing because he was there.
Yeah. So they're paying a scouting department. I just find this interesting. I mean, if they're getting free access to like some scouts and some data and some reports, I don't think it's as big of a deal. I think maybe the club is like, Wayne, why'd you say that? But I don't also think maybe they don't care either. So I think some people, there was a couple people who were like, oh man, this is awful. And I'm like, this is a nothing burger in my opinion, but we're talking.
So I have a thing that I tweeted about that you thought was no good. And
let's get into this. Oh, I'm about ready to rip you a new one.
Go ahead, because I don't think you know what I'm saying.
What are you saying? What are you saying?
I'm going to say the numbers first.
Okay.
So this is a tweet that had 2,300 impressions, which is a lot more than our normal tweets. It's like 20 times more. Hernan Losada points per game at DC United 1.37. Wayne Rooney's point per game at DC United 1.08. Ben Olsen's 1.33 is all I tweeted. And then a day later I said, people who are reading this as an endorsement of Hernan Losada are bringing in their own biases. We'll discuss this on the show tomorrow.
So are you just implying how poor the team has been? Was that your overall?
There's 2 points. One, Wayne Rooney for dollar per roster and investment in the club is underperforming any coach in the last 10 years under the Dave Casper regime, is my point. And then 2, this team has been historically mediocre for very, very long. No matter who the coach is, the problems do not necessarily lie with the coaches. They lie with roster construction to see that these are the results that we can get over a long, long, long period of time. That was my point. And that Wayne is severely underperforming for what, you can't, it's hard to go back in time and prove a counterfactual. I'm imagining Ben Olsen with a roster that is 9th in spend in the league instead of Joseph Nguyen as your starting forward. That is a counter. That is like a fanfic that I like to play in my head a little bit. That is my point. Ted,
different eras, very, very different eras in the league. We'll talk about different time frames as far as like how long Ben Olsen has been there versus Wayne Rooney. Do you really want to like open the can of worms of just how awful and how bad things were in 2022 with this team? And he was kind of thrust in there in August and said, I don't know, try to figure out to make it work.
But you can look, Hernan and Wayne have a pretty similar sample size at this point. They're not too far off as far as given opportunities. That's a fair. I don't know how you can look at Wayne. I mean, maybe we expected a little bit more from him, but I mean, that just really felt like just kind of a mess of a lineup that needed to be
reworked and retooled. I mean, when you take his number now from 2023, it's 1.25 points per game. Again, not great. I'm not saying
still lower than both of those coaches.
Still lower
over longer.
Yeah,
period.
still lower for them both of those coaches.
Still a total that I think struggles to make you into the playoffs.
Yeah,
I think less than 1.5. You are on a wing and a prayer.
Okay,
for the most part.
When you don't have things, I thought you were implying, and I was about ready to rip you a new one over. Like, I'm like, come on,
2020 is the best coach
2020.
In the last,
I wasn't. I know what you were getting at with maybe how mediocre the team's been. I get it, and I am like, despite the fact I do not make wanting Dave Casper fired as my personality, I absolutely am.
We both do, though. We both would like it. It's just it's not what it's like people whose politics they wear it as a hat.
I mean, if you want a whole season where we just list off why Dave Casper be fired, I'd love to, but I don't want to make that my personality. And we have a show we have to talk about for an hour, so it gets boring really fast.
And if we only talk about it on the show, in 3 years from now, when we're still talking about it and he's still the general manager, I don't think we'll have any listeners left. So it certainly can't.
See, John, you got me. Like, I was getting all excited. We got this new player coming in. Like, maybe I'm hyping myself up, and then you just drag me right down. No, it's bad. It's been bad for a while. The stadium has done. I think of any MLS team, I think the stadium has been the absolute weakest. They have had the weakest bump of any team with regards to a new stadium. It has done
not in spend. I think that there's certainly, and I don't know if it's caused by the stadium, probably has something to do with it, but like the turnaround in the roster spend from RFK days to now is got to be the largest jump percentage wise.
Here's a question for you. Knowing what you know now, so I know this is unfair as all get up, and you had the ability to travel back in time and tell Dave and company not, would you tell them not to hire Wayne Rooney? Do you wish that we had never even made this venture now? It's a deep question. Interesting question.
Yeah, it is.
Because you got to think maybe we're not getting the players we're getting, We're
not. Click is not coming here. Ravel Morrison isn't coming here, so I don't know how we're going to manage that.
So it's an even split, basically.
Right. So we're back. We're back. Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to remember like who we were really rumored to be in on other than Wayne.
Benteke. Benteke was
no. Coach wise, manager wise.
Oh my goodness.
Do you remember the other name? I don't remember any. Was Ezra Hendrickson one of the names?
I mean, it was. I mean, if you're talking about who was hired, who was in the. There was nobody. I mean, they were all like, nope, Chad till the end of the year, and then Wayne showed up, and then they kind of scrambled to find. I mean, there was that whole scramble to find some hires.
I think I think we were on a treadmill, right? Mm-hmm. I think that since this has happened, we're going to end up exactly where we started when he came here. Both, development wise, I think we're going to have Ted Kudepietro is going to be like the one.
Maybe
Pines
Fletcher
sort of turning
maybe
into a good
Fletcher.
Player.
Don't.
Maybe he's got to get a lot more minutes in the second half if that's going to be the case.
He's still 16, 17.
Well, you're talking about how Wayne Rooney's going to improve these players. He's got to play to improve. Yeah. If that's the case, and he's likely gone at the end of this year. I don't know. I think it's tough. I think if Dave Casper was going to stay, I don't think it matters, right? Like I think if this brought some sort of bump, if some fans like this, I guess it's good. I think it will utterly be a period of no progress for the club.
Yeah,
in the year and a half.
I think. Next question, right now, yes or no? Wayne Rooney back next year? Do you want him back?
No.
I think I'm in the same.
I also want Dave Casper out.
Yeah, well. I think we all want him out. I guess the one caveat. I think if this team makes the playoffs, if they sneak into that 8 or 9 spot, even if they're like one and done, I think there's maybe a chance you have both back. But if Wayne comes back, then you're definitely having Dave Casper come back. If Wayne doesn't come back, maybe there's an opportunity or a chance to finally get somebody with a different mindset. I'm still not.
No Wayne. Yes, Casper is the worst case scenario. That is the.
Oh yeah.
That is the doomsday.
Yeah.
There is no plan. There will be no plan.
Yeah.
If that happens.
I mean, my thought process is that I am still not unconvinced. That there were these small little rumblings about Dave Casper being an advisor sort of like when it was, he's just going to be an advisor. And maybe it's going to be thought, well, maybe he's looking to step down. And then he's like, no, not advisor. I am still in charge. I am still in charge. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain type of statement. I do wonder whether they were like, we're bringing Wayne. We need somebody who knows the MLS rule book. Once he's gone, I hope so. I wonder if maybe then they say we need to come up with something new. I think if this team misses the playoffs, I could absolutely see Dave Casper being fired. And I'm dead serious about that. I do not know how you can justify him at this point if this team misses the playoffs. I
think you can even do this from like a relatively passive standpoint, a non making it your personality standpoint. Just the idea that look at where this club is and where it has been, just from the concept of let's try something new, let's have a new voice, let's have a new philosophy. That's even completely valid. There's general managers don't stick around this long with this level of mediocrity in the league. It's like unheard.
And the crazy thing is that the investment has gotten like they're starting to have hits on international. Remember, like before, it was like we would sign a designated player and he'd be gone the next season, and like literally they had no budget. They've shown, I think, that when you actually hire a scouting department, when you hire an analytics department, when you invest in that type of stuff, you can find better players. That's why I'm excited about this Gabriel guy coming back, probably more than I would be about a lot of other players, because the investment in analytics, and I know that they are actually investing in that scouting. They're not just using Football Manager. They are actually investing in their scouting, and it's producing results. You just need the thing that has been the Achilles heel is that this team has just not been able to commit to some type of identity. And it's been the nature for a while.
Jason Levine, if you're listening, and I know that you are, you should be getting a better return on your investment. Oh, yeah. You're now the ninth highest spending team in the league, and we're ninth in the East, and that's not going to stay. I don't think that's going to stay. You have the right to get more of a return on the money you're spending. You should have a team that has a defined identity. You should have a fan base that is not perennially depressed and sort of self-loathing. And you deserve more than that. And the way you get that is a new charted direction. And the only way you're going to do that is a new general manager.
Ask yourself why, like this. Any team that finished bottom last year that is in the position we are in should be feeling positive. We should be like, hey, we're building something. It's not perfect yet.
We're not in last place anymore, at least.
But because of how the roster's been constructed, because of the short-term nature of Wayne Rooney's contract, it doesn't feel like that. It feels like, this is a team that should have gone from worst to first. And like that would be the only way this would feel slightly worthwhile. And it hasn't happened. And of course it hasn't happened because this team is still like not very good. And this team is still out here, all due respect to Steve Birnbaum, re-signed him to a new contract. And I do not think I thought we were all ready to move on. I thought this is the year we're going to move on from Steve, and he's back. So, his agent, man.
This team, by the way, this week we had the oldest roster in MLS.
Yeah.
We had what was the average age? Yeah. Oldest team in MLS, last. So just to reiterate your point about sort of the future is now for this. It was all about we're going to get experienced players because we're trying to make the playoffs right now.
Yeah.
Where are we at?
I mean, I don't think if a new coach comes in, he's left with nothing. I mean, I think there is some pieces, but it is, I mean, Benteke is a year older, Click's a year older. Those are your two players that have played the best. If this Pirani guy hits, I mean, I think it changes a lot of things about the perspective of this team. But it's if he hits, and we'll see. I'm interested to see how he does.
Taxi's still young enough. He's young enough that you wouldn't need. Donovan Pines has become a starter.
That's been the one big thing I think is the fact that he has looked good. And I think again, we'll see what happens with another coach comes in and wants to play two center backs. Maybe we have old Donnie Pines back. He's been playing.
It's possible. Yeah. If that happens, he should absolutely demand a transfer. But he should be like, I only play this formation, guys. This is all I do. Don't even try to make me do something else. But just to talk about what you might have with a new roster, or Tyler Miller is an all-star keeper, and I think maybe you can maybe starch out some. I think he'd be as good of a goalkeeper. I understand. I'm saying I think he'd be as good of a goalkeeper, or maybe better, without having to do the things that he's been asked to do. About sort of the sweeper key. I don't think that changes his shot stopping. I don't think it changes. So like that, the people's concern about that, there have been maybe 3 games this season where he has positioned himself poorly. The Atlanta game that you and I were both at would be one of them. Maybe two other ones where it's been not a matter of him getting chipped or him running out. It was just mistakes. So you got that. Alex Bono. You got two goalkeepers that are at least league average. I think that's undeniable. You got Donnie Pines, provided you don't change your formation. You've got Ted Kudipietro on league minimum, who is maybe not an every game starter on a playoff team, but certainly in the mix to play frequently.
And a player,
a
player that I don't think we've hit he's hit a ceiling yet. I see good games out of him, and he's shown real growth. Certainly as a player.
Chris Durkin, as a young enough player, I think certainly an MLS caliber player. Benteke is, he's your star guy, and he's here for another year and a half, so you'd have him anyway. He's not going anywhere. He's gonna ride this contract out and maybe retire. Or I think his family lives in Doha, so he might just go play in the Qatari league with his family and then cash out, which I would do were I him. That would get like, what, you want one last ride for $20 million a year? You got it. But there aren't a whole bunch. Jacob Green, I don't know that you could really count on. I mean, he had some moments this season, but I don't really think that that's the case. Christian Fletcher, if he pans out, is a fantastic. I think we don't know. Jury's extremely out on that. But a lot of players are older. A lot of players are in the last 2 years, 1 year of their time here at this level.
I feel like there are enough good pieces in here that if you just got in somebody who had a vision, had an idea of like what it could be, builds upon the academy signings that this team's bringing in. They're still producing some good talent from what we've seen in their academies. They're still top up there, certainly. I still feel like that's what this team is. It's the missing piece. It's everything. I do want to get to one of our questions on Threads. You can find us on Threads, ask us some questions. We'll read it. And I thought this was a good summation of everything. So that was brutal to watch. This is from Pipe 720 on Threads. That was brutal to watch. Brian is out. Klitsch suspended again. Teki has been neutralized by the league, now privy to his prowess. I have questions about Rooney's ability as a coach. Would you put him next to a legend? When you put him like in a legend like Bruce Arena, there's an obvious delta. New England benefited greatly from Birnbaum accidental injury, after which we had a massive defensive breakdowns. What hope is there for the rest of the season? I would say this is MLS. 3 weeks, this team I think this team could still absolutely turn it around. They've shown those flashes of being able to be consistent. The schedule coming up, I won't say it's all easy. They do have a home game against Philadelphia, but their upcoming schedule is not awful. It's not so insurmountable. They can basically get themselves back into a playoff race with a home win against Chicago. Again, Chicago are not a fantastic team. They're playing better because their DPs are now clicking, so they can now play a little bit better. But I think they're similar to us. So I think that game, honestly, if I'm talking about that game against Chicago, home game, that'll be the game, I think, where we'll know if this team comes out and wins that game convincingly. I think they make the playoffs. If they come out and they drop it or lose it or draw it, I think that'll be curtains. But still a lot to play for. This team is still in the playoffs. I think they'll still make the playoffs. Question as to whether that's good enough. It is what it is right now with this team. So still hope. I think there's still hope for the season. I don't think the season's dead or over completely. Would you agree with that or no?
It's not dead for sure. I think there are things to be excited about. Like you said, there have been moments this season, and they've been not just like 45-minute periods. They've been multi-game periods where you're like, oh, this is what they were trying to do. Mm-hmm. I understand completely what they were trying to do. I will say that those games in my mind have featured prominently a Lewis O'Brien as part of that functionality. I don't know what we're going to get here as he moves out. We'll find out very quickly. So I think that there are certainly pieces here when things come together. This team looks pretty good. I feel like I know for a fact that the level of consistency will never be there with this roster. It just does not feel likely if it's not gelled at this point. Injuries continue to hamstring this team. We continue to not have a left back, and we're not going to have one probably for the season. It appears. We're just going to kind of Frankenstein that role as much as possible.
Or they're going to Frankenstein, or there's going to have to be some sort of trade. And I think they've talked about that. They do have space for another international player, assuming Pirani comes in. I actually find it interesting that they're making this move and they're not maybe looking at that more immediate need. But I guess it's what talent can you possibly bring in to fill that role? So
I'm curious if one of the goalkeepers are on their way out, because Luis Zamudio just had a short-term loan to Pittsburgh terminated, even though he's played every game and has like a 0.8 7 goals against average and has won man of the match multiple times there. I'm curious if the team is like, all right, come back. We're going to move one of these keepers out just for a roster relief, and we're going to get a left back in. So left back, a goalkeeper and Gam for a left back. That's just a human body.
If it's, I think right now this would be like, I mean, you might be right. I'm just thinking about it, but I still am not 100% convinced that there isn't a move in Victor Paulson's future. There were talks about that. He was gone for a while. He came back. So I'm not unconvinced that they are looking maybe to get some cap relief, to get somebody else to come in here. I would say he's been solid. I don't think he's irreplaceable, especially with some of the talent there. Now, maybe the whole Birnbaum injury might change that. If Birnbaum's out for the rest of the year, maybe that changes things on that front.
Yep.
So
that would be that would be this team's luck.
Yeah.
To have to have one trade shit.
Yeah.
And then have him become in the required.
Yeah.
So.
It's been a long show. There's been a lot of angst. I feel better. I feel like, I feel refreshed. And
Ted, I think coming into a break, I think this is a good opportunity to really see where we're at and how we're feeling. And I think, most people are feeling pretty negative coming into this break. I'm excited for this Leagues Cup.
Oh yeah, me too.
It's it's like a bottle season. I'm going to watch a lot more games. You and I are kind of stuck because usually we can just watch all the 7:30 games run at once. So we're kind of stuck for this. This is going to be a little more spread out so we can watch more games in the tournament and really know what's going on. But particularly, I probably will not watch the MLS versus MLS games. I feel like I got enough of those.
If it's Liga MX versus, we'll watch DC versus Montreal, obviously. But if it's
that's the only one.
But if it's Liga MX, we also got the Women's World Cup coming up, so that'll be fun. We've also got, I feel like there's one more thing that I'm forgetting about, but I can't.
Insomniacs enjoy the Women's World Cup. Yeah. That's going to be on the background at work and probably watch the US games so. Really unfortunate there, but great for Australia. Not good for my ability to watch the games. Anybody else on the side of the world? Oh, well.
Anyway, thank you guys so much for listening. We'll probably be off next week because there won't be really much DC to talk about. And also, I don't think we're going to have a Spirit podcast either. So, thank you guys for listening. We'll catch you guys a couple weeks. Vamos.